All right, let's talk about one of those super handy tools in JavaScript that can make your websites feel incredibly fast and responsive. We're going to dive into asynchronous JavaScript, specifically this awesome feature called web workers.
You know that moment, right? We've all been there. You click a button on a website, maybe you're trying to process an image or sort a giant table of data, and suddenly, nothing. The whole page just locks up. Animations freeze, the cursor starts spinning, and you're just stuck. It's super frustrating and, honestly, a pretty common experience.
So what's actually going on when that happens? Well, the culprit is almost always this one single, totally overworked thing called the main thread. The best way to think about it is to imagine it's the star performer of your website's whole show.
And this right here, this really shows you the problem. Our star performer, the main thread, is trying to do everything all at once. It's juggling what you see, the UI rendering, your clicks, all the smooth animations. But then, we also ask it to do some really heavy, time-consuming calculations in the background. And the moment one of those big jobs starts, our performer gets completely overwhelmed, drops all the other balls, and the entire show just grinds to a halt. And that's your frozen page.
So, the big question is, how do we stop our star performer from getting totally burnt out? How do we keep the show running smoothly for the audience? Well, the answer is what we call the web worker solution.
So what in the world is a web worker? It's actually pretty simple. It's just a way to run your JavaScript in a totally separate background thread. So going back to our stage analogy, this is like hiring a specialized behind-the-scenes crew. This crew can handle all the heavy lifting, all the complex stuff, completely out of sight. And that frees up our main performer to focus only on what the audience, the user, actually sees.
Okay, so we've hired this awesome backstage crew. That's great. But how does the main stage actually talk to them? How do we give them a task and then get the results back when they're finished?
It's really just a simple three-step process. First, in your code, you hire the worker. You do that by creating a new worker. Easy enough. Second, you send it a task to do using the post message function. You can think of this as literally handing a note with instructions to your backstage crew. And third, you just listen for their response with onMessage. When the worker is done with its job, it sends a message back and your main thread can pick up the finished results. Now this all sounds pretty amazing, but it's not a total free-for-all. This backstage crew has a really strict set of rules they have to play by. So let's go over some of the most important limitations you need to know about.
Okay, this is the big one. The most crucial rule is that web workers are totally isolated. They can't directly touch or change the web page itself. So that means no access to the DOM, the window or document objects that make up the page. They literally can't just walk out onto the main stage and start moving things around. All communication has to go through that one official channel, post message.
And building on that whole idea of isolation, here's another really key rule to remember. When you send data from your main thread to a worker, that data isn't shared, it's copied. I love this analogy. The best way to picture this is that you're sending a photocopy of a document. You're not handing over the original file. Now, this is actually a fantastic safety feature because it means the main thread and the worker can't accidentally mess with each other's data. But there is a trade-off. If you're sending a truly massive object, the time it takes to make that photocopy, that process is called serialization, can actually become a performance issue itself. Something to keep in mind. All right, so we get the rules, we get how they work. Now for the really fun part. What kind of jobs are actually perfect for our new backstage crew? Let's check out some powerful real-world examples. These are some of the absolute best candidates. Really, any task that's super intensive on the processor but doesn't need to block the user from doing other things is a perfect fit. Think about applying a complex filter to a photo, or running some intense math simulations, or maybe parsing a gigantic JSON file you just got from an API. Even something like real-time syntax highlighting in a code editor. All of these things can be offloaded to a web worker, and that guarantees your main UI stays buttery smooth. So here's the bottom line. Web workers give you the power to separate the performance from the heavy lifting. They make sure your user's experience is never ever compromised by some complex task running in the background. And that really just leaves us with one final question to think about. Your UI is the main stage. So what heavy lifting are you going to move behind the scenes?